Hello, everyone, and welcome to COM 466, Social Movements, Persuasion and Social Movements. And as you know, we usually meet in the classroom, but today I haven't exactly been feeling up to snuff for a couple of days now, so I appreciate you allowing me to stay home and sort of rest up, but most importantly, not get anybody else sick or get myself sicker by exposing myself to and my germs to everybody else. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Today we were scheduled to talk about the difference between a movement and a campaign. And so I know I mentioned that briefly on our first day of class. I don't know that many of you picked up on that. And so today we're actually going to spend a little bit of time doing that. Once I finish that, and it's going to be a short lecture, I'm going to also put up a reading assignment for you. It won't be long or overbearing in any way, shape, or form, and hopefully it'll be somewhat enjoyable as well as educational. So thank you again for letting me do it this way. So what's the difference between a movement and a campaign? A lot of times when people ask me about things, they're really talking about campaigns more than they're talking about sort of like an overall arching movement. So let's talk about a few things that set them apart. First and foremost, campaigns are mainly about policy, about that doing something very specific. It's usually short term, and it's usually has a very specific end goal. For example, a campaign to expand Medicaid, or a campaign to elect someone like we normally think about it, or in the parlance of a let's say a nonprofit social movement that has a specific need, let's say a fundraiser for a specific reason, be that an event, a person, or a particular issue that we're trying to get passed in Congress. Okay, so all of those are limited in scope and goal. They have short-term goals, which means that you either win that campaign or you don't. So the real-world examples I always use come from the rescue, as most of you know. And my example for this is that the idea of animal welfare has some specific branches to it. One of those branches does include feline animal population control. And so we have projects to help get cats neutered or spayed. And so that's one particular part or campaign within the overall movement of this nonprofit. Now, that might sound a little abstract, so let me give you a more specific one. We also are big on rescuing injured cats and moms and kittens. That's sort of what we specialize in, right? So we have several campaigns that go on during, any given moment, really. My favorite is a little kitten named Babette, who needed a major surgery. That surgery was going to cost a little over $500. And so basically, I was put in charge of raise the $500 and we'll get Babette that surgery. That's a campaign within the overall nonprofit as a movement, which I'll get to that distinction in a second. So a campaign is short term. It has a policy goal usually. It's something you can do. All right, so then a movement, what is that about? That's about values. Remember, we talked about changing values that people identify themselves with. So it's generally not like a one-time campaign deal. It's not short term. It's long term. It's not the race, it's a marathon, as they say, right? The movement needs to be maintained, and one of the ways that a movement is maintained is through its campaigns. Campaigns play an incredibly important role in the maintenance of a movement, because if you don't have campaigns going that remind people that you're there, whether that's just an information campaign to get news out to people or information out to people about a policy or a project, whether that's asking for funds, whether that's reestablishing goals, it does not matter. But you need to remind people that the movement is there, which of course plays an important role in maintenance. So this is an extremely strategic and very pinpointed campaign. Now, campaigns differ in their strategy. Political campaigns, for example, you need to win the whole shebang. You cannot win part of the market. If you're talking about a PR campaign, for example, if I'm marketing cats needing to be trapped, neutered, and returned, it's called a TNR program. Let's say that I'm doing some work for the nonprofit on that program. Over time, I need to build up money, right? I need to sell that program in order to make it work. So every couple of months, we do a new PR campaign where if we lose that campaign, that is to say, if we don't hit our goal, we're going to be okay. Like, the movement doesn't end. A campaign ends, but the movement as a whole does not end. And so the difference between a PR campaign and, like, say, for example, the election of a political candidate campaign is that PR is looking for market share, not looking for the whole market, not looking to win. It's not a zero-sum game. If I didn't raise $500 for Babette, she still would have had the surgery. But I actually raised over $500, paid for her hospitalization, and I paid for some products that we got her for aftercare. So, you never know what you're going to get with a campaign. More often than not, obviously you want them to be successful, but within the guise of a movement or within the space of a movement, they aren't critical. They aren't, you lost a campaign, you lose the movement, unlike political campaigns, for example. So we think about movements more from a marketing perspective than we do from a public relations perspective. Yes, you need to maintain interest. Yes, you need to maintain people's knowledge of a fact. But this is really one of the problems that we have with certain movements that have campaigns within them. For example, people who believe that healthcare should be free to everybody. Let's go there. So socialized medicine, as they call it. Well, you have to really work to get an entire system to change, and ours isn't going to. But what we do is we take small steps. For example, expanding Medicare, expanding Medicaid in certain areas, and the states voted on that. And so what our state did was they hired actually one of our graduates from the sociopolitical major to run this push for more socialized healthcare. So we start off with small bills and small actions and an information campaign. Those are the ways you get those off the ground. And then you get people moving towards talking about an overhaul of the whole, let's say, national system. Now, there's 49 other states besides Missouri. Not everybody has adopted the same healthcare policies. Some have expanded Medicare, and Medicaid, others have not. Excuse me. So it's a pretty blatant line. Once you know what you're looking for, it's a very clear line between what's a movement and what's a campaign. Campaign short-term, movement long-term. Campaign, it either gets done or it doesn't. Movement, you have wins and losses as you go along. You're looking for a market share. A campaign is short-term. Movement long-term. I think I actually just said that first. I'm sorry. I'm on Benadryl, so it's probably affecting my brain a little bit. So there's big differences between those two, but a campaign or a series of campaigns is necessary for a movement to maintain itself and to carry on to get to its end goal, which of course, again, is changing values, not just changing small actions here and there. So multiple campaigns within a larger movement, you can find multiple examples of this probably in your daily life. And I think the most obvious one I started with on the first day of class was the Clean Water and Clean Air Act, which both got passed, and those were campaigns to get those bills passed. They became law, and then what? Well, people started going for other environmental issues, and there was the Greenpeace movement and other environmental, WWF, World Wildlife Federation, or Foundation, not wrestling, everybody, not wrestling. I'm thinking Panda Bear here. And some other organized movements that sort of started working to get emissions down, to get people to convert to solar energy, et cetera. And that's still going on. Those are campaigns within the broader social movement. And of course, in the United States, ours led to the EPA, which I think has been completely dismantled at this point, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So, you know, if you're ever wondering, how do we have the Clean Water Act of 1973, and yet people in Flint, Michigan can't drink their water still, by the way, if anybody's not paying attention, and you could still set fire to the water in some places, perhaps we need to really think about what that Clean Water Act actually does. Whether or not it was a successful campaign is not questioned. It became policy. Whether or not it's a successfully enforced policy, that's a completely different question. And luckily for movements, we don't generally deal with once they become policy. That's not usually where we spend our time. Leaders of movements, people who are involved in movements, generally spend their time more on the value of that they're trying to change and getting people to jump on the train, so to speak, so that more policies can be not only passed but enforced. Okay, I hope that helps you. There could be a test question in the midterm, like, what's the difference between a movement and a campaign? So here's all your answers for that. And that was what we were going to talk about today in the classroom. So again, thank you for letting me do it here on this video. And I'll be putting up your written assignment, reading assignment here in just a few minutes. Okay, everybody, you take care of you, and I'll see you on Thursday.